gerrymander. It's illegal, you can't do it. I chatted with first of all, the American fellows enlightened me that in America you certainly can gerrymander, and they've got some examples of really crazy gerrymandering. And then I was chatting to my colleagues yesterday when I got back from the lecture, and so I was talking about this gerrymander, and he said, no, even in South Africa you can gerrymander. It's not fair, it's not a good thing necessarily, but the people who are gerrymandering will back the idea. The ones who are being gerrymandered are going to hate it, all right? But he said, remember in the apartheid era, people in Walvis Bay were voting in Sea Point because the nationalist government gerrymandered to get those votes. So thank you for that. I did go and, was it you? I did go and check up. Thank you. All right. Yes.
Salamander coming.
That's okay. It's a blend. Remember we talked about blends where either both or one of two words loses a portion. So it's Governor Jerry added to salamander, so the sala part fell away, and we got Amanda. Salamander. So it was the shape of the electoral division that Governor Jerry had created. It looked like a salamander. So they put the two together.
Could there be the slash?
Probably when it started. Yes. Everything has to start somewhere. So we ended off yesterday talking sort of like with a little bit of commiseration about how we see English, standard English. Is it going to the dogs? What is happening? All these new things. And so I'm going to read a couple of things, and then we'll go back to this. So first thing. This is in this book, this little magazine called The Oldie, right? So, remember also I told you about the inkhorn controversy in the 1600s, which was about the neologizers versus the linguistic purists, the purists who did not want any tampering with the language. And the neologizers won out. They said, no, we want to enrich this language, and we keep adding words and making it very beautiful. We're kind of at that crossroads. We're at that kind of situation where we have linguistic purists who are saying, I don't like all of this new stuff and these acronyms and initialisms and slang and colloquial. I don't like them. So what are we going to do about it? So there's an article here, The Shifting Nature of Right and Wrong. Those who believe most new words and usages to be wrong tend to forget that all words and usages were once new. By contrast, the laissez-faire brigade, who argue that widespread and prolonged usage is enough to make anything correct, must find sentences like, I ain't done nothing wrong, entirely acceptable. I think this usage is fine in conversation, so colloquially. But it is not, to me, correct, nor is it ever used by the usages all advocates in their own writing. All right, so we're wanting to preserve some standard English, but what this is saying, we're going to have to accept some changes, all right? I draw two conclusions from all this. One is that right and wrong are not always useful concepts in the use of English. Much depends on the context in which the words are used. In speech, a letter, an article, a book. The second, and what is wrong today may become right tomorrow. We've got to remember we're only about 350 years away from Shakespeare. Now, the English written by Shakespeare was then, move on to Dickens. The English written by Dickens. And then we go to the English written by Hemingway. Then we go to the English written by J.K. Rowling. If you're looking back now and you say, okay, I love Dickens, but, he's got his own style. It was a lot of quite, flowery and everything. It's changed. The words, vocabulary. So we have to accept some of that. But we don't want to accept that language is going to be sort of debased. Go to the dogs, as it were. All right, so the second is that good writing is something quite different from grammatically correct writing. Johnson was surely onto this when he rejected the idea of an English academy to regulate usage, an idea borrowed from France. They've got an academy and promoted by three writers he greatly admired. So we just have to worry about context. So to make you smile, I'm going to read something else now. This is now from The Economist magazine, brilliantly written magazine, I have to say. And this is from a long time ago, but I kept it because it really impressed me and amused me. It is, no, I've said the wrong thing. It's the Finance Week. I like that too. Not The Economist. You gave me The Economist article. Yeah, this is the Finance Week. Okay, we take English for granted, but if we explore its paradoxes, we find that quicksand can work slowly, boxing rings are square, and a guinea pig is neither from Guinea nor is it a pig. And why is it that right is right, but fingers don't fing, grocers don't gross, and hammers don't ham? If the plural of tooth is teeth, why isn't the plural of booth beef? One goose, two geese. So one moose, two meese? Doesn't it seem crazy that you can make amends, but not one amend? That you comb through the annals of history, but not a single annal? If you have a bunch of odds and ends and get rid of all but one of them, what do you call it? If teachers taught, why don't preachers praught? If a vegetarian eats vegetables, what does a humanitarian eat? If you wrote a letter, perhaps you boat your tongue. In what language do people recite at a play and play at a recital? Ship by truck and send cargo by ship. Have noses that run and feet that smell. How can a slim chance and a fat chance be the same, while a wise man and a wise guy are opposites? How can overlook and oversee be opposites, while quite a lot and quite a few are alike? How can the weather be hot as hell one day and cold as hell another? What is the weather like in hell? Have you noticed that we talk about certain things only when they're absent? Have you ever seen a horse-full carriage or a strap-full gown? Met a sung hero or experienced requited love? Have you ever run into someone who was combobulated, gruntled, ruly, or pickable? And where are all those people who are spring chickens or would actually hurt a fly? You have to marvel at the unique lunacy of a language in which your house can burn up as it burns down, in which you fill in a form by filling it out, and in which an alarm clock goes off by going on. English was invented by people, not computers, and it reflects the creativity of the human race, which of course isn't a race at all. That is why when the stars are out, they are visible, but when the lights are out, they are invisible. And why when I wind up this lecture, when I wind up my watch, I start it, but when I wind up this lecture, I end it. Okay, so let's talk on the money story here. Yesterday I introduced you to the notion that currency selling things originated from the barter system in Rome, as we still have barter system around the world and certainly here in Africa, but eventually that became untidy. It was impossible as the Roman Empire grew, so they created these blocks with a representation of worth. By the way, the Greeks and the Romans, they weren't the ones anyway that first introduced money. It came from Asia Minor. But let's look at the word money. As things progressed and the coinage was used, they didn't have machines, putting out all these coins. So the coins that were made were irregular in size and weight. They tried to keep them as regular as possible. If you look at any old coins, you'll see the irregularities around the endings and so on. But here, this coin has a representation of Juno, the queen goddess, the wife of Jupiter, and her epithet, her name that was associated with her descriptive phrase was Moneta, Juno Moneta, meaning the advisor. That was the queen goddess. And this epithet is going to be the base of our word money. The reason for that, she was protectress of finances. Why was that? Because the first mint was established in the temple dedicated to Juno Moneta in the Forum, in the Roman Forum. So there's the temple to Juno, and the first mint was kept there. So when we look at the etymology of both the word mint and the word money, look how interesting this is. So mint coming from Old English into our modern English, but we take it all the way back And we see it comes from the Latin moneta. We look at the word money. It's coming Middle French, monnaie, from the Latin moneta. So both of those words are linked to Juno moneta, protectress of finances. In the time of the Republic and the Empire, as we do today, monies, paper monies and that we do, coins were used to promote consuls and emperors. So, occasionally women did, like Queen Juno, the queen goddess, but even wives of emperors sometimes got a look in there. But they were used to promote, wonderful archaeologists, if they find a coin with Caesar, Julius Caesar on it, we know when that coin was minted. So there we are here with another coin with Caesar. Looking at associated words. Caput capitis in Latin means head. So when we are talking about money, we're talking about capital. So do you have enough capital to go into this business? What is your capital worth? Okay, it's the same word that's going to give us the capital city, a capital letter, because it comes from head. But the reference is here to heads of cattle. So that's how it's become associated with money. So wealth owned by an individual or company. All right, we look now at the currency we wish we had. The pound. This is the British pound. There is the symbol of the British pound. Okay, let me just for a moment. We know we talk about pounds and pence now. What was it before? Pounds, shillings, and pence. And the initialisms for pounds, shillings, and pence? LSD. Okay, not the drug. Not the drug. So we're going to look, what did that LSD stand for? Did anybody know? Well, pounds, shillings, and pence, but why wasn't it PSP then? Not sesterces, but almost. Okay, let's have a look. LSD. Decimalization came 1971, so now it's just pounds and pence, okay? But the S did not stand for shilling, nor did it stand for sestercii, which was also a currency. It's Libra, the Roman weights. If you're a Libran in the astrological chart, you can see you've got the scales there. Solidi, a lighter gold, and the denarii. So they kept that. If you'd have asked people in Britain prior to 1970, what does this LSD stand for? They'd say, just pounds, shillings, and pence. Oh, can you explain the D? No. Can you explain the L? No. But anyway, we know all about that. So now let's look at the symbol that is familiar with us. It is still the symbol used today. So I'm just going to go out there. I'm getting so technical by the end of this week. It's amazing. Yeah. This symbol is actually a lovely, rather elaborate L. It sometimes has one and sometimes two strokes across it. The reason for the stroke is to indicate it's an abbreviation. All right, it's an abbreviation. It's an abbreviation of Libra. And then for Americans, some Americans in the audience today, you don't use the metric system and the kilograms and whatnot. So if you are baking and weighing things, they'll say you need 5 pounds of mince or something. It's going to be LB. You wonder why the LB? Again, it's the same thing. Coming from the Latin, it's the weight. You're referring to the weight. Then we talked about dollar, the origin of dollar coming from min thale, the silver mine, and the tale becoming dale. And the notion is, where did the symbol to represent dollar come from? The one idea put forward is that it is the figure 8 with a line down the middle. But that has been refuted to say, no, that's not actually it. It was referring to why the figure 8, the 8 pieces of silver, the Spanish pieces of silver. Spanish was, of course, involved, but what they say, the better, kind of the more established theory, is that this comes from peso, which is the Spanish word for weight, and it was abbreviated to a P with the S on top of it. So originally. And we talked about it, that the dollar as a currency was only introduced in America in the late 1800s. So up until then, it was all in many other places, and certainly had a strong Spanish influence. Okay, now we need to go back to where I need to go, there, where you need to go. Let's go. Okay, we talk about pound sterling. Pound sterling, and that's also the British pound, okay, the pound also coming from weight. The history of this, what has it got to do with sterling? We're still saying that, aren't we? It's going to take us historically back to the invasion of the French, the Norman invasion. Now we know this, so different, so French, they want to do their own thing, you see, we know that. King William, he tried to learn English, he couldn't. So what happens with their money? After 1066, the French used their own silver coins in Britain, and they had to indicate this, they had it stamped with a little star, esterlin. So that was the sterling, pound, and it became, then we look at the weight, why pound sterling? The pound sterling was originally 240 esterlin coins until decimalisation. And until decimalisation, there were 240 pence to the pound. So they kept that notion of first of all, the weight of the number of esterlin coins, and then the number of pence. Okay, and remember, you are going to get the PowerPoint will be sent to you by the summer school. So if you don't get to write all of it down, don't sweat it. Other money matters, right? Salary. The word salary, you earn a salary. If we go all the way back to the Latin, it comes from salarium, which will take you further back. It'll take you to the word sal, which is salt, which you already know in English derivatives from saline. Yeah, you know, if you get dehydrated, you need some salt in your system. Okay, so what did it have to do? Anybody want to venture an idea that how salary, why was salt, money given to soldiers for salt? What was important there? It was a preservative. Salt was a preservative. You know, you've got to go back to, we're talking about money salaries only started to be paid to the Roman soldiers about the 450 BCE. Prior to that, they were actually paid in salt because they would go on their marches for months on end. What do? You're on the march. You can't, McDonald's round the corner. You can't carry lots and lots of food. It's going to go off. So they would obviously see an animal. Somebody would shoot the animal, kill the animal, and they would cut it up and they would divvy it out, pack it in salt, kind of like biltong. And that would they would be able to preserve it and continue on their march. So salt was hugely important for their sustenance, okay?
It was also extremely valuable and highly negotiable.
Yes, extremely valuable. You also said that in the front. Valuable commodity to have, yeah. Fiscal matters. All right, we're going to talk about fiscal matters. You and I would not describe our personal finances as our fiscal stuff. We will talk about pecuniary matters. What are my pecuniary? It has to do with money. And if you're impecunious, then you don't have much money, okay? But you're not going to talk about fiscal. This is a specific word used to do with taxation, government revenue. So where does this come from? Fiscus is a purse, a chest, and came to be known as the treasury. If we think about the word confiscate, if you were very badly behaved when you were at school and the teacher said, if you keep playing with that pen, I'm going to confiscate it. What was he or she saying? I'm going to take it away and put it in a box, in a chest, and you can get it back later. So when the Roman Empire expanded and became a number of provinces out there, they had to pay their taxes to the Roman government. Roman governors were put in place. Sadly, there were some crooked ones, corruption still exists today, it existed then. And they would run the collecting of the revenue, and they would keep it in the fisc, which was the treasury. And then once a year or so, the government officials would come and collect this revenue, take it back to the treasury in Rome, to the imperial or republican, but imperial treasury, and it would be kept there. So that's pretty much a specialized word, fiscal. We talked yesterday about how words change. Words can become more specialized. They can become more generalized. They can become ameliorated, better. They can become pejorative. They become worse. But this is one that, losing its sense to simply of a purse, it's become specialized in the financial world. Now, what you don't want is to be bankrupt. Okay, no, not at all. Bankrupt comes from banca, and originally Italian bancarotta, coming from the Latin rupta. And what this refers to historically is that although there was in Italy, the first bank was in about the 1400s, an actual established place, building, go to a bank. But even post that time, most of the money lenders would set up their benches in the marketplace, in the open air. So they would have a bench, and you could go and do your business saying, look, I'd like to borrow this money, this amount from you. And yes, I've got that. And if the money lender had no more money and he could no longer do business, he would have to break his bench. Okay? So that broken bench represented no money. All right? So we take that through and we say, if you say, can you loan me this or that? And you say, no, I'm broke. It's coming from here. I am broke.
What happened to confiscate?
Confiscate would just be to the verb to put into a chest or a box. Okay. So not to do, well, I suppose they could confiscate your property as well. So this brings me to a little bit off the point, but it brings me to the fiscal shrike bird. So we're going to just break in away from money matters for the moment, and we're going to look at ornithological matters. Any ornithological fans here? Yes, okay, so you would know about this bird. All right, the fiscal shrike is the common name for this bird here. And if you look at his colorings, okay, I'm going to look at that fella next door. This fiscal shrike was first discovered in the Western Cape in the late 1900s. And as we're going to see, if any new living creature, butterfly, bird, any hoho, whatever, is discovered, this has to be sent, the information must be sent to the International Body of Biological and Botanical Nomenclature. It's an international body, and you have to do it. We saw it with Vuvuzela, which I'm going to just repeat again now. Okay, so I don't know who the particular person was who discovered this bird. We see a lot of them in the beautiful Kirstenbosch Gardens. But he sent the information back to the international body, and he described this bird. He said, look, it looks very much like the coloring of our tax collector. Okay? There he is, the tax collector in Cape Town. This sort of black academic gown, this white ruffle over here, and he's collecting taxes for the treasury. Okay? And he says, the habits of this bird. It's a really tough bird, this, because what it does, it goes down, it sees a little shrew, a little ho-ho, whatever, and it will take that shrew, that little mouse, and it will impale it on a thorn in the acacia tree, or maybe barbed wire at this moment. And shame, that poor creature died an awful death. And this fiscal shrike, just like the tax collector, having no sympathy whatsoever, okay, would sit up in the branches and would look down, and slowly but surely this bird, this little shrew would be rotting. And he's looking and he's very excited about this. And then soon enough, out come lots of maggots eating the insides of this creature, this hoho, or this mouse, whatever it would be. And that was the treasure that bird once swoop down, eat all those lovely, lovely, juicy maggots and hohos and worms and things. That is the treasure house that is inside, the treasury that is inside that he looks for. So you see, when you discover something like the fiscal shrike, you have to talk about the habits so they can get a description, because there are two sides to this, to what we're going to get back from this international body. They're going to tell us, okay, we are going to put this creature, this butterfly, whatever it is, in that genus. Genus in Latin is family, kind, type. It's going to go into the genus, and then next to it will be the species. Species means appearance. So you're going to describe to me something that I would now be able to expand upon. That's what they would do. So having given this story all about, this is a cruel bird and it eats things and what, they gave it the genus of Linnaeus, which is the butcher, collaris, to describe it, its appearance, with a collar. The butcher with a collar. Sort of like that tax collector as well. So, binomial classification, amazing thing that was kind of improved upon significantly by Carl von Linné, a Swedish botanist. But he was not the first person to introduce the notion of we need to have a classification system, a taxonomy, for all our plants and animals and things. It was actually Aristotle. Amazing, eh? Aristotle, the philosopher, who first introduced this binomial classification. But he was Greek. He was a Greek philosopher. So those of you, if you go to Kirstenbosch Gardens, all right, you look around at the plants, they always tell you there's a little thing there and it's going to give you the binomial classification. The first word is capitalized, genus, so that's the kind, and then the second descriptive thing is in lowercase letters. But you will notice that some of them, the words look distinctly, if you know a little bit of Greek, they look Greek, they don't all look Latin. What looks Latin is the ending. The endings are all Latin. Because all of the classification that Aristotle did in Greek, Carl von Linné, when he now readjusted the system, he kept those classifications, but then he Latinized the endings. And from there on, it's always been Latinized, okay? But if you notice, oh man, I'm sure that originated from Greek. Yes, it did. So this, Carl von Linné, so he's the Swedish botanist. He, from a little tyke, he had loved collecting plants. So he was really mad about plants. And up until he decided as he grew up, he wanted to reclassify, reorder things. There were, apart from Aristotle's classification, there were other classifications. So some plants had like 3 or 4 different variations because there were too many systems that were doing their own thing. So Carl von Linné comes along and he changes. He says, no, we are going to Latinize everything. And to such an extent did he believe in his project, he Latinized his own name. He is known as Carolus Linnaeus instead of Carl von Linné. Yes? He didn't. Oh, well spotted. Okay, look, he had a little bit of kind of pride, I don't know. He should have made that L a little L, lowercase, but he didn't. Okay, so as I've said, all living things are classified according to this, and let's have a look. This is what Carl von Linné had to say. Deus creavit, Linnaeus disposuit. God created, Linnaeus organized. Maybe that's why he kept the capital letter for the Linnaeus. I deserve it. Just some examples here. It's, the notion of classification is actually, it's huge because you can get a lot of their family names as well, belonging to more than just the genus. You can have subgenera, so I'm not going to go into that. These are the 2 important things. So Helianthus annuus. Helios is Greek, meaning sun. Anthus is Greek, meaning flower. But now, okay, so we know he wants to put this as sunflower. We're not going to change it to something like sol flora, which would be in the Latin. No, he's not going to change that. He's going to keep that, but he's just going to Latinize the end there. So Helianthus, that's the type. So sunflower. Annuus, the common. Annuus from Latin, annus, the one that crops up all year round. Vulpes, fulva. Vulpes is Latin for fox. Fulva is the descriptive species there, red fox. Panthera is our cat family, and Leo is the specific one. That's your lion. And then, of course, now how do you describe this big bear that you do not want to meet? Ursus is a bear, There's male bear there, Ursus horribilis. That's the grizzly bear. That is the description of the grizzly bear. Kind of reminds me of Queen Elizabeth, when she said, oh, annus horribilis. She had suffered an annus horribilis, a horrible year with the divorce of Diane and Charles. And then we've got focoina. Focoina is the description they use of a porpoise, and if you go into the etymology, it means it's a mixture of a pig and a fish, because if you touch the skin of a porpoise, it's like the skin of a pig, and of course it swims. So that's the description that they've got. And this one, of course, Moria vuvuzela, coming from South Africa, from the Western Cape. There it is. All right, words associated with politics. This is our second section we want to look at. Now, these words have been around, some of these words have been around for a long, long time. And just interesting to note that in 2016, the words associated with politics, and particularly pejoratively associated with politics, absolutely exploded with the number of hits, as you would say, people looking them up. When you're talking about that's a fascist thing to do, a fascist thing to say, okay, they wanted to know where. All right, let me look up fascist. And there's a very interesting story etymologically that we go back to here historically. So currently, fourth most searched word in the dictionary's history, that's in Merriam-Webster's dictionary. It means an authoritarian right-wing system of government. And where you look up etymologically, it comes from a bundle of rods. And in ancient Rome, there were the two highest positions of power were the consuls, the two consuls, the two, so that there would be supposedly a democracy, one not one person being a dictator. Didn't always work. So two consuls, two praetors, so like president and prime minister. They were the hot shots. Now, as we have with all our politicians, the top ones, the presidents, prime ministers, they are guarded by bodyguards. That's just how it is. We see Zuma, and they go out in their big black cars, about 10 of them for the one person that's in the middle somewhere, and they have bodyguards. Well, these consuls and praetors had bodyguards, and these bodyguards carried a bundle of rods like that. If they were attending to a praetor, that's the second in rank, they would just have a bundle of rods tied. That meant, symbolically, that the praetor, if he had gone out, say, to one of the provinces or anything like that, he had the authority to order that the bundle gets unwrapped, and the lictors, that's the name of them, the bodyguards, would whip the person concerned. There's a very famous story of this with Verres. If you've heard of Verres, Verres was a governor of Sicily, and that was a Roman province. And he was an absolute rotter. He was taking money, he was stealing things from the temples, the gold and the silver. He was terrible, terrible. And kind of to cover his tracks, one day there was a fellow called Gavius, and Gavius was threatening to report Verres to Rome. When Verres heard about this, he said, no, we can't have this. So he orders that Gavius be dragged in front of him, and he orders his lictors to unbundle the rods, which they did, and they whipped him. But because he was a governor of the province, he had also, can you see what's protruding from here? This is usually just for consuls. He was a proconsul, so he had this authority. There's an axe head protruding there, okay? That meant he had the authority to put somebody to death, to order them to be executed. So in actual fact, not only was poor Gavius absolutely beaten to death, and he kept saying, but please, I'm a Roman citizen, thinking that would protect him, because a Roman citizen was supposed to always be taken back to Rome and have a fair trial in Rome, no matter what they were accused of. He was having none of it. He didn't want him to go back to Rome. And so he was then crucified. Gavius was crucified. And then this was a case which was one of the number that actually forced Verres out of the thing, because Verres was then brought back to Rome and he was charged because he had not listened to "I am a Roman citizen." And so he was able to be charged. And Cicero, the famous Cicero, is the one who prosecuted Verres. Now we look at here, we've got Mussolini, and we have him. He was a great admirer of Julius Caesar, Mussolini. And so in the 1919, I think it was, 1919, he got his group called the Fascismo. He called them the Fascismo because he so loved this notion of the authoritarian. This is Julius, my man, he was the dictator, and the idea of the fascist. And he used that symbol as well. 2016, most searched words on the internet apart from fascist is, and of course we know post-truth. That was the word of the year, post-truth politics, where the truth is irrelevant, it's bullshit, baffles brains, whatever, that sort of thing. So we've got misogyny, hatred of women, misos plus gune or gyne, meaning woman. Xenophobia, making an awful reappearance. Xenos is foreign or strange, and we've got phobos is fear. Paranoia, Greek word as well. All three of these are Greek-based words. Para meaning beside or beyond, and nous is the mind. So it's where you are paranoid, you think everybody's out to get you, okay? Characterized by delusions. All righty then. So another word that has been coined, and we know words can be coined, neologisms keep coming in, and we know that we're talking about eponyms, things named after people. Trumpism. Trumpism denotes extreme right-wing, narcissistic, anti-immigrant views and overt patriotism. So we could put, isn't it funny? Now look at that, overt patriotism. What word could I put in place of that? Who was an overt patriot? Chauvin, Nicolas Chauvin. He was that French guy who loved Napoleon so much. So we could put chauvinist. That works too, doesn't it? Yeah. I'm sorry if you are a Trump fan, but I'm just poking a bit of fun. Okay. So let's look at some Trumpisms. I poked fun at Bushisms yesterday or the day before, so let's just get it out there, This is Trump. I like China. I just sold an apartment for $15 million to someone from China. Am I supposed to dislike them? I'm going to do things for women that no other candidate can do. Sorry, losers and haters, but my IQ is one of the highest, and you all know it. Please don't feel so stupid or insecure. It's not your fault. Okay. Now, of course, if I'm going to poke fun at Trump and Bush, I have to poke fun at our very own Zuma. Oh, my goodness. And there is such a thing as a Zumaism, all right? Zumaism. I mean, I don't know what to say about this fella. The principle of user pay has to be applied to complement the money government spent. This is what all economies in the world do. We can't think like Africans in Africa. We're in Johannesburg. Becky's shaking his head at this whole thing.
We announced that our membership figures stood at 769, 700. Listen properly.
Listen properly.
769,820 and 70 members, down from 100.2 million in 2012.
All right, it's all righty. So, yes, sorry, something. Very good. If I have time, I've got another lovely joke that somebody gave me that I'll read to you if we have time at the end. So thank you for that. I love all those jokes. So we look now. Trump has been elected. He was a candidate. Okay? Zuma's elected. He was a candidate. You can be an exam candidate. You can be a candidate for a job. Where does this word candidate come from? It comes from the Latin candere, to be white, to be shining, and which gives us candidus aum, which is white, and candidatus, which is a person clothed in white. And what it was that if a person in ancient Rome was running for political office, he, and I have to say he because there were no she's in those times, they weren't allowed to run for office, women, he would have to be transparent. He would have to show that he was actually, when he was being nice to everybody and going around the forum and shaking hands and saying, how are you doing and how are your family? You know this guy wants your vote. So he would have to wear a plain white toga. He was not allowed to have any senatorial band, any colored band, whatever. He had to be plain white toga. Of course, we didn't have the materials that we have today to make something so shiny and white. So what they would do if they were really wanting to be on their game about this, they would get chalk, because the material that they would have would be wool. They would have pure material, all right? And that, if you've ever seen wool, when it's sheared from the sheep, it takes a lot of washing to get it to be clean. So often it was kind of grubby looking, okay? So they would get the chalk and they would rub the chalk all over the toga. So, somebody slapped them on the back, they could be going, but anyway, they really were keen on that. So, again, the word ambitious and ambition. So we know that Zuma has ambitions to stay in office. Lord help us. We know that Donald Trump had the ambition to be president of America, and he is. So for us, it means a strong desire to achieve something. Okay. But actually, we're going to go back to this notion of the candidate being transparent in the forum, where he'd be walking around chatting to people. And this word ambition comes from ambire. See, we've got a word exit here. There. Okay. Exit comes from the Latin ire, to go. Ex means out. So the little word, it, actually means he or she goes. Ex, out. So ambition is to go, ambi, around. So the person who was wanting to be getting the votes was going to go around and actually canvass for them. So the word ambire then became, in Latin times, a specialized word to canvass for votes. So literally going around, but then having that notion of canvassing for votes. Okay, so you get voted in. What's next? Well, the Romans were very superstitious. They were polytheistic. They believed in many gods. They believed that the gods controlled the affairs of mortals. So they wanted to be sure that if they were going to now take office, they had to take office on a day where the omens were good. Okay? They believed in omens. So we look at some really interesting words here. So once elected, now he's going to be, let's say he's been elected consul. He is going to be installed in office. But he goes first to what we would say maybe a psychic, but he goes to a soothsayer, and he says, I want you to tell me, check out the omens. Now, the word, the adjective we get from omen, ominis, which is the Latin word, is ominous. Now, if I say, oh, God, there were ominous clouds in the sky, is it a good thing or a bad thing? So this is a good example, too, of a word that had a neutral meaning originally. And now, in our English today, it is pejorative. It's negative. So, oh, that's an ominous. Oh, gosh, no. So another good example of that degeneration of meaning. Okay, so what the person, and his name was an augur. What the augur, the soothsayer, the priest, would do, he would look at the entrails of animals, sometimes the entrails of fish. And if everything looked very nice, slaughter a goat or something, and it all looked fine, and no worms in there, and it's all good, great. If the fish also looked all fine, great. And then it is okay for you to be inaugurated. and you will have an inauguration ceremony, which means a ceremony where you are installed in office. Now, there was another kind of soothsayer that would be, or could be, appealed to, was an auspex. All right? Auspex, auspicis, was a soothsayer, priest. But this priest had the specialization, a special sort of thing that he could do. He looked at the flight of birds, okay? And he would be able to tell you, okay, this is a good omen because I let out all of my birds and they all went that way, or they all went that way, or some went this. He could read, he could interpret the flights of birds. The word auspex is, in fact, in Latin, has become, auspex was a blend of avis, meaning bird, plus spicere, to watch. So he watched the birds to get the omens. So when we talk about this is an auspicious occasion, you mean it's a favorable occasion. The bird's path was great, okay? The negative would be inauspicious. It's unlucky, unfavorable. But you know, I went to a wedding once, a little while ago, and you know, you always with weddings, you've got somebody's the MC, and this young couple had chosen their best friend to be the MC, not dad and not grandpa, not uncle, the young best friend. So he'd been to a few weddings in his time, this youngster. So he thought there's a kind of formula when I'm standing up to give my speech. There's a formula. I hear people saying it all the time. I would like to welcome you all to this suspicious occasion. So he'd never spelt it, but he'd heard it. So when we talk about something operating under the auspices of, it's with the favor of. So we could say that Shawco here at UCT functions under the auspices of UCT with the favorable acceptance and support of UCT. This augurs well. So coming from the augur, who's that priest who's going to look at the omens, that's the little saying that we have. There's our auspex up there, and I put this one in because actually you could have female soothsayers. And so this is just a picture of one, and she's got a little chicken there. And another way of working out good or bad omens was you'd have some chickens in a little hook, and that soothsayer would say, okay, right, I'm going to read the omens now. Stand over there, Marius, stand over there, and let the chickens out, you see. I'm going to see whether they're going to eat or not eat and whatever, and this will mean that. Well, of course, this was open to absolute abuse because they wanted to be paid by the person that they were going to be doing the reading for. So they'd say, look, the thing is, if the chickens go straight for that seed over there, that's a very good omen. So what they would do is starve the chickens for a few days. Chickens come out and go straight there. That's fantastic. Thank you very much. You owe me 500 sesterces. Okay, we look at the word democracy. Demos is people. Kratia, power. Government, supposedly by the people, for the people, of the people, but really it's government by their elected representatives. In ancient Greece, I'm going to go back to Greece here because we're looking at words coming from Greek. In ancient Greece, it was a small city-state to start with, small city-state. All male citizens were expected to take part in political affairs, to come to all of the assemblies, to vote if there's somebody they're needing to put in power. Everyone's supposed to come and do that because we are a democracy. It was small enough to expect that. Now we are going to go out to the ballots and we're all expected to go and vote, but at different stations all over the place, and you will elect your official to represent you. In ancient Greece, demagogue was a very neutral word, simply meaning a leader, agogos, a leader of the people. If I tell you that I think so-and-so is a demagogue, is it a good thing? No. Yet another word that has taken a pejorative turn, all right? You do not want to be called a demagogue, okay? We've got a couple in our around here, our government, in our politics. Okay. Then we look at ingenuous. We don't commonly use that word. We might use ingenuity, which is a little bit of a corruption, but I'll come to that in a moment. But we use more commonly disingenuous. And sadly, that is often an adjective referring to that politician made a disingenuous statement. It's like a not sincere. You know, they'll say anything post-truthing, right, to get a vote. But this has a little interesting history too. An ingenuus in ancient Rome, or ingenua, feminine, was a person who was, now we can call them born free. They had, the parents had been slaves and had been set free, right? They were liberti. They were allowed restricted rights. But if you were a born free, you are born free. You then were considered to be a citizen of Rome, and coming with that was the notion that, you know, Rome, we are like the most powerful nation in the world, and we know it was so sophisticated. So you were expected as a person, a citizen of Rome, you knew how to behave, you knew what to do, you were not a provincial. From the provinces, provincial. Remember, the Romans, they had lots of provinces, and if they called somebody a provincial, it means, yeah, you come from the provinces, but it means you're a country bumpkin and you don't know anything. So the ingenuous, born free, family, grandparents, parents had been slaves, but now this person is free. So now you have full rights, and it insinuates that you knew how to behave. But it's got, for us today, I won't say it's pejorative, I don't think it's pejorative, but it's got a slightly different meaning today. If you describe somebody as an ingénu, that's the French, ingénu, you mean somebody who's naive. Okay, so this person, what they're saying by giving the status you are an ingenuus, is that you haven't traditionally, you had passed down from generations how to behave as a citizen. You knew to it. So you're naive, okay? So it's got that sense today. Disingenuous, not a good word. Oh, let me just mention about ingenuity. If you say this is, a person has ingenuity, what do we mean by that? Creativity, it's clever, etc. So one would have thought it comes from the word for ingenious, from ingenium meaning talent and so on. And in fact, that is where it came from. Ingenium is talent, okay, inherent talent. It's what you're born with. Gignere genitus, to be born. You're born with some talent. But there became a confusion, a conflation with this ingenuous. So we've got ingenuity also meaning cleverness, as is ingenious. But if we look at the etymology, there are different etymologies. But we've conflated the two in our current English. All right, we look at a couple of types of government. Oligarchy, arcane in Greek, means to rule. Oligoi is the few. Ruled by a small group of people, usually wealthy people. It doesn't, the words I'm going to bring up now don't necessarily always have to do with politics. You can use them in business kind of situations as well. A big corporation that's run by an oligarchy. Russia, China, North Korea. Oh. Kleptocracy, kleptein, is to steal. So a government where those in power exploit national resources and steal. Well, we know for a fact that Putin has amassed over $130 million of personal wealth up to now. So what can we say? Russia, kleptocracy, Nigeria, Zaire, Haiti, South Africa, Zimbabwe, yes. Okay. Plutocracy, ruled by the wealthy. Plutos is wealth. So again, we're looking at the powerhouses, a powerhouse certainly there. To run for political power, you need a lot of money behind you. So it's run a lot by money. Gerontocracy, ruled by elders. Gerontos is an old man. It's an interesting thing for me here because the definition says ruled by elders, not by an old person. Because I would say, look, Mugabe, he's an example, but It's going to come. We'll watch the changes, but they say a group, all right, for this particular, to say this is a gerontocracy. We have gerontocracies in the rural areas where people defer to the old men in the village, okay? Similar thing happened in ancient Sparta. Gerousia, a group of elders, were the people that would be deferred to. And you were not allowed to be part of Gerousia until you were 60, and you had that position for life. I think now, okay, my American people, if you get to be in the as the chief, in the law, Supreme Court, that is also for life, isn't it? That is for life. And usually you're talking about elders or sort of older people. Soviet Union in the 70s. Soviet Union. Tribal communities. We look at stratocracy. It's government by the military. Stratos is army. Strategos is the general. So if you're strategic, you're like a general. You know how to do everything. Myanmar, Egypt. So although we've got Aung San Suu Kyi in Myanmar, she can't be the head. That's been precluded to her. So I've put her here as a gynecocracy. So why I'm saying it's odd, okay? A gynecocracy ruled by women, gynecocracy. And in the dictionary, this allows rule by a woman or women. Okay. That's interesting, the difference between gerontocracy and gynecocracy. The ancient legendary example of a gynecocracy were the Amazon women. The legendary race of these amazing women fighters. And the word Amazon, coming from the Greek a, meaning without, mesos, the breast. They would supposedly cut off their right breast in order to make it easier to fight and have their bow and arrow there. So, gynecocracy. And of course, what about, did they have husbands there? No. If they needed now to have children in order to bolster their population, they would go to the neighboring village and have their way with the men. And if a little boy was born, he would go back to there, and the girls would be brought up. But that is all legend. All right. Let's look at some pardon? The notion of the Amazon River is that they supposedly were seen fighting on the side there. I don't know why, but anyways, it's all kind of convoluted. Yeah. Okay, Burma, there we go, Myanmar. We've got Angela Merkel in Germany. You've got Estonia. We've got United Kingdom, Taiwan, Chile, Liberia, and Jamaica. That's not the only ones, by the way. All right. Now, we're going to... Oh, can we just have a couple more minutes? Just a couple more minutes. Okay, so I'm just before I go on to the next word, I'm just going to play you just a quick clip, and that will give you an idea of how I feel about this. Oh, no. You know now what it is, damn it. Okay, so let's have a look. No. When I tried to do something too quickly. All right, there we go. Your lips are moving, you lie. Okay, which brings me to impeachment. Your lips are moving and you lie. Oh, no, I didn't have anything to do with Watergate. No, not at all, I didn't. No, till eventually have to come clean. So what is impeachment? People have the mistaken notion that this means you get kicked out of office. It does not mean that. It means that you are charged with an offence, and which is committed when you are in office. It comes from the Latin impedica, in foot chains, going back to the ancient times where if a governor of a province was accused of some sort of misdoings, he would be taken back in foot chains to Rome for a trial there. Of course, they're not going to put you in chains right now. This is the first process. Impeachment is the first stage to remove an official from office. The second stage is if you get convicted. Okay, you've got to be convicted to be removed from office. So we've got people being impeached, but they're not removed from office, okay, because it did not come through. So let's have a look here. There's Nixon. He quit. before he could be removed. Okay, what happened to these? Removed. Removed. Saved, and by so few votes. But of course, you know,